11 minutes. That's how long it takes for a Russian tactical nuclear warhead to travel from Kaliningrad to the Estonian city of Narva. Not hours, not days. 11 minutes. And here's what makes your blood run cold. The officer authorized to launch it doesn't need to call Moscow. He has pre-delegated authority. A colonel, a code, and a decision that ends 58,000 lives. But there's a twist to this story that NATO strategists discovered only 3 years ago. And when you hear it, you'll understand why every major defense conference since 2022 starts with the same two-word question. What about Narva? I'm going to show you 3 numbers tonight. The first number is 97. The second is 400. The third number is classified, but I'll tell you what it represents. And when you connect all 3, you'll see why this Estonian border town is the single most dangerous flashpoint on Earth right now. By the end of this video, you'll know something that 99% of people don't. The real threat to NATO isn't tanks or missiles. It's a 19-year-old Estonian soldier who, in about 7 hours from now, will have to make a choice that changes everything. Her name is Kristi, and her story starts at 3:42 local time. Before we dive in, you need to understand where Narva is. Picture this. You're standing on a bridge. On your left, Estonia, a NATO member state. On your right, Russia. The bridge is 300 meters long. That's the entire buffer zone. This isn't some remote border outpost. This is a city of 58,000 people living on the front line of the most powerful military alliance in history. And here's where it gets complicated. Remember that first number I mentioned? 97. That's the percentage of Narva's population that speaks Russian as their first language. Not 70%, not 80%, 97%. To Moscow, this isn't an Estonian city. It's a Russian city held hostage by NATO. Quick note before we continue. What I'm about to share is a reconstruction based on declassified NATO wargame scenarios, actual military doctrine, and interviews with defense analysts. The characters are fictional, but the systems, weapons, and strategic calculations, those are very, very real. Think of this as a mirror held up to the world as it exists right now. Kristi Vino is 19 years old, 2 months out of basic training. She's lying in a defensive position on a hill overlooking Highway 1, the main road into Narva. In her hands, an FGM-148 Javelin missile system. Unit cost, $178,000. She's been trained on it for exactly 11 hours. Through her thermal scope, she's watching a column of Russian armored vehicles, 12 T-90M tanks, each one worth $4.5 million. But that's not what makes her hands shake. It's the white triangle painted on the lead tank's hull, a triangle with a black Z inside. That's not an exercise marking. That's the 27th Guards Motor Rifle Brigade, the same unit that leveled Mariupol in 2022. Her radio crackles. Hold fire. NATO command is assessing. Assessing what? Whether 400 meters of Russian armor crossing into a NATO member state constitutes an armed attack under Article 5? That's the second number I promised you. 400 meters. That's how far the tanks have penetrated Estonian territory before someone in Brussels has to make a call. Kristi's Javelin locks on. The system beeps. Green light. 14 seconds to fire. Her training officer's voice echoes in her head. If you fire, you start a war. If you don't fire, you lose a war. She fires. Let me tell you what happens in the next 47 seconds. And I want you to pay attention because this is where military doctrine meets reality. And reality doesn't care about your treaties. The Javelin leaves its tube, climbs 150 meters, then plunges vertically through the T-90M's turret roof. Exactly as designed, the tank's ammunition cooks off. 4 Russian soldiers die instantly. Kristi rolls down the embankment, already moving to her secondary position. But here's the thing. She transmitted that shot on an unsecured frequency. Why? Because Russian electronic warfare had jammed every encrypted channel 20 minutes earlier. So that one word, contact, reaches Brussels in 0.8 seconds. It reaches Washington in 1.2 seconds. And it reaches Moscow in 0.3 seconds. By 3:44, NATO's North Atlantic Council is in emergency session. Now, everyone knows Article 5. An armed attack against one shall be considered an attack against them all. Sounds ironclad. But here's what they don't tell you in the documentaries. Unanimity is required. Every single member state has to agree. And at 3:52, Hungary's representative is on a phone call with Budapest. Turkey's representative is reviewing additional security guarantees before committing. The US envoy is calculating midterm election optics. Unanimity takes time, and time in modern warfare is measured in minutes, not hours. While diplomats debate in Brussels, a phone rings 840 kilometers away, Kaliningrad, a windowless bunker built to survive a direct nuclear strike. Inside, Colonel Dmitry Volkov is staring at a red folder marked Escalation Protocol. Volkov commands the 152nd Guards Missile Brigade, 12 Iskander-M launchers. Each can carry a 50-kiloton tactical nuclear warhead. For reference, Hiroshima was 15 kilotons. Here's where it gets insane. Volkov doesn't need presidential authorization. Russia's nuclear doctrine includes something called pre-delegated authority. In a crisis where Moscow might be decapitated by a first strike, regional commanders have launch codes. The logic makes sense, until you realize the crisis might be a misunderstanding. At 5:47, Volkov's phone rings again. The voice is encrypted, distorted, but the message is clear. Target Tapa military base. Fire on my command. Tapa is 90 kilometers from the Russian border. It's also home to 1,200 civilians who live in the town next to the base. The math is simple. Destroy Tapa. Kill the NATO Rapid Response Force before it mobilizes. Force negotiations before this escalates further. Volkov looks at the photo on his desk. His daughter Elena, age 11. She lives in Berlin with his ex-wife. If he fires, she lives. If NATO retaliates with strategic weapons, she dies. His finger hovers over the authenticator. But let me tell you what terrifies NATO planners more than Volkov's missile. It's not the weapon. It's what happened 34 minutes earlier, when Christie's platoon commander, Lieutenant Jürgen Kask, made a call on his civilian iPhone. Why civilian? Because every military network was jammed. He called his mother in Tallinn, not to say goodbye, to activate something called Operation Silent Guard. She works at Estonia's largest data center. Her job, pull the plug, not on the facility, on the country. Within 6 hours, 400,000 Estonians can't access their bank accounts. Within 12 hours, pharmacies can't verify prescriptions. Within 24 hours, the power grid, smart grid automated, starts failing because control servers are offline. You don't invade a country, you turn off its oxygen. Estonia is the world's most digitally integrated nation. Taxes, voting, medical records, banking, 98% online. When you shut that down, you don't need to fire a single shot. You just wait for the chaos. By hour 14, Tallinn's hospitals are on emergency power. ICU patients on ventilators are being manually pumped by medical students working 12-hour shifts. By hour 36, pharmacies run out of insulin. By hour 48, morgues overflow. The projected civilian death toll in the first 72 hours? That's the third number I mentioned, the classified one. I can't give you the exact figure, but NATO wargames consistently project 4-digit casualties from systemic collapse alone. No bombs, no bullets, just the digital infrastructure failing. Here's where the story takes a turn. At 5:54, while Volkov's finger hovers over the launch button, something unprecedented happens. He picks up a civilian phone, illegal, unsecured, and dials a number he memorized during a NATO-Russia Council meeting in 2019. It's the direct line to U.S. European Command. A voice answers. Volkov says one sentence in Russian-accented English. Your aircraft is 30 seconds from our airspace. Redirect now, or I have no choice. The aircraft in question? A C-17 transport plane whose transponder malfunctioned, making it look like a bomber on Russian radar. The pilot receives the warning via AWACS. At 5:55:01, the plane banks hard left. Russian radar sees the course change. The call is logged as unscheduled deconfliction. Volkov hangs up. His superior will call him a traitor. He'll be dead by morning, officially a heart attack. But because of that one call, the nuclear threshold holds. Now, here's what I haven't told you yet. In March 2024, a Russian general staff officer defected in Istanbul. In his laptop, a complete wargame simulation called Operation Northern Dawn. The scenario: invade Narva, test NATO response time, measure escalation thresholds. The conclusion in that document: NATO fractures within 18 hours if civilian casualties exceed 500. The CIA leaked it to Estonia. Estonia leaked it to Germany. Germany leaked it to the press. By March 21st, everyone denied everything. But here's the thing. NATO ran that exact simulation 2 months later. Every decision I just described, from Christie's javelin shot to Volkov's phone call, was stress-tested in a bunker in Brussels. The simulation ran for 72 hours. At the end, analysts asked participants, what saved the scenario from nuclear war? The answer, unanimously, human hesitation. Christie hesitated before firing. Volkov hesitated before launching. The NATO commander hesitated before committing troops. Each hesitation created a window. And in those windows, people made calls, sent emails, found reasons to wait one more minute. So let me tell you why this matters to you. Not because you live in Estonia, not because you're worried about World War III, but because this story reveals something about how modern security actually works. You think Article 5 protects you. It doesn't. Article 5 is paper. What protects you is the fact that somewhere in a bunker, a colonel with a nuclear launch code looked at a photo of his daughter and made a call instead of pressing a button. You think digital infrastructure is separate from physical security. It's not. The moment Tallinn's internet went dark, people started dying, not from bombs. From insulin they couldn't access, ventilators that stopped working, and pharmacies that couldn't verify prescriptions. You think wars start with invasions. They don't. They start with misunderstandings, malfunctioning transponders, and junior officers making split-second calls on jammed radio frequencies. The real defense isn't missiles, it's transparency. It's understanding that Christie and Volkov and Jurgen aren't hypothetical. They're real people in real positions, making real decisions under pressure. And the only thing preventing catastrophe is their ability to see each other as human. Here's your takeaway. Narva isn't an exception, it's a template. Taiwan has its own version. The Korean DMZ has its own version. The India-Pakistan border has its own version. Every flashpoint on Earth has the same structure. Close proximity, high stakes, and human beings making decisions in compressed time frames. The question isn't whether the next crisis will happen. It's whether the next Volkov makes the call. And that brings me to why I made this video. Because the moment you understand the mechanics of how war almost starts, you become immune to the propaganda that makes it seem inevitable. The moment you see Christie's face, Volkov's daughter, Jurgen's mother, the abstraction dies. You're not helpless. You're informed. And informed citizens force their governments to act differently. So here's what I need from you. First, hit that like button if you made it this far. Not for the algorithm, for yourself. Because liking this video is a way of saying, I choose to understand rather than fear. Second, comment 0342 if you want me to break down the Taiwan scenario next. Same format, same depth, same human lens, but I'll only make it if I see real demand, because that video will get flagged, demonetized, maybe even removed, so show me you want it. Third, share this with one person, not your whole feed. Just one person who still thinks war is about tanks and flags. Send them this video with a message. Watch this before you vote. Watch this before you argue. And if you do nothing else, subscribe and hit the bell. Because the next video covers the woman who runs NATO's cyber defense. She hasn't slept more than 4 hours a night since 2022. She has a cat named Firewall, and she just prevented Russian malware from turning off power in 3 German cities. 0342 isn't just a time, it's a state of mind. It's the moment you realize safety isn't guaranteed by treaties. It's maintained by people who choose, every single day, not to press the button. This is Ocean Alert. We don't do fear, we do clarity. And clarity is the only weapon that works when the missiles are pointing at your home. Your move.